I think we're we're recording. Yeah. I'm not.
Yeah.
All right. So this is Ben East. Doing Ben East Film Productions. I'm here with Matthew Whiteside, who actually kind of brought me into this whole idea of doing interviews, and I'm very excited to have you as a host or as a guest, and I get to return the favor from you interviewing me. It was over a month ago now that we did that.
I know, man. No, thank you so much for interview, dude. This is so exciting. I love getting to interview you and talk with you, and the chance to come back and I guess now me kind of blab about what I'm doing is fantastic. It's exciting, and that's cool that I inspired you to do it, man.
Yeah, yeah,
Look at
good.
that.
No, you've had a big effect on a lot of people, and we'll get into that. But let's
Okay.
start with Uniweb Productions, and I want to talk and hear a little bit about where that's going. Like, where has it come from? How has it evolved? What are you working on now? Tell me about it. How many interviews have you done?
Oh my gosh. All right. So I've done over 40 interviews thus far. Uniweb started 2 months ago, I think.
Huh.
Um, 2 months, and I have interviews scheduled out through April and some in May and in July already. Um, so Uniweb started. It's funny because I had just finished publishing my book, and wasn't even on Twitter or anything like that. And I was like, I need to figure out a way to market myself and my what I'm doing. And I was like, well, I need to get on social media. I don't have any money to market. Like, I don't have a marketing budget, which is zero. Social, you know, social media is $0, thankfully. And so I started getting into. I found the writing community, and connected with a couple people on there, and I went around for a week, like harassing everybody. I have my book, harassing everybody, like, look at Trent Foster, like just chasing people down. There are people who would do those, like,
I
buy my
watched
book.
the book and beating people over the head with it. Is that really?
Yeah, that was my tactic, and I did, like, it worked for a little. People were like, "Fine, geez, Louise, I'll buy it. Just leave me alone." But persistence does help to some degree, but it's also very annoying. Um, and I was like, "There's got to be a better way. I cannot literally chase down every human being and tell them how important my book is." So I thought, and so a big thing for me too is I work a 12-step program of recovery for alcoholism. Um, and so in my program, it's all about serving other people. Service is a huge thing for me. Uh, and I thought, I'm doing this in my life to recover from alcoholism. Why wouldn't I do it in the rest of my life? If it's making this part of my life work and it's really it worked really well, why wouldn't I transport that to other aspects of my life? So I thought, well, how can I be of service to other authors? What do I have that I can be of service? And I thought, why it's so difficult for me to promote my book. I hated it, how difficult it was. I said, what if I can build a platform that other people can promote their work? And it was a place of, like, I just want. I got, like, almost like defensive for the indie author and people who are trying to publish, and like how difficult it was for all of us. And I was like, it shouldn't be this way. Let's change it. And I decided to do the Uniweb thing, and I just asked people if they would be interested in me interviewing them so they could talk about their books. And, like, the response was insane. I mean,
That's how you and I connected. I don't know if it was one of your first calls. You said you started about 2 months ago, and we got
yeah.
about a month ago or more. And it was like I responded to a Twitter call with gratitude. I couldn't believe there was this opportunity, and I was like, "Please pick me, please pick me." And it was great. So it seems like it's working. And what I've observed now is that, you're not doing call outs on Twitter. You've got like a scheduling mechanism on your website, right? People can go and sort of self sign up. Is that how it is?
Dude, yeah, I don't know. Okay, so I'm learning this whole thing, like, on the fly. I basically threw myself into the deep end of the pool and was like, I really want to swim. And I'm figuring out, like, that whole website thing. I was frustrated for like 2 days straight, just like driving myself crazy trying to figure out how to make a website. I got it done, and then trying to figure out the scheduling thing, because I'm literally answering. I scheduled 40 plus interviews in 3 days, by myself, and that was like for somebody who does not pride themselves on organization, like I had to really get my butt in check.
Right.
Yeah, it's grown pretty organically, but it's been amazing. Like it's teaching me business on accident. Like I'm learning how to
Yeah.
better produce content, how to better organize and manage my life, and because my schedule is important now. Like I'm not going to leave somebody hanging that I have an interview with. I've got to be on point because this is important to you all just as important to me.
That's awesome. That's great commitment. And I've seen, I mean, the whole thing has grown and evolved. Now you've added graphics to your, I mean, that had started coming on, but now it seems like super graphics. Tell me about the movement towards that.
Okay. So going on YouTube, like this is something I realized when publishing a book as well. And even more so when going on YouTube and doing videos. I used to be so terrified of saying or doing or writing or like people seeing me do something that they were going to be like, you're weird, you're wrong, blah, blah, blah. The reality is that no matter, like, half the time or the majority of the time, what I write, what I do, even when I put it out for people to see, the majority of people aren't going to look at it. Like, it's not going to happen. So like that fear of people are going to think something of me is completely gone away, because it's like, no matter how hard I try, there's still the majority of the human race is not going to see what I'm doing. So it's just like, get it out there, right? But with that, because it's so hard to catch people's attention and get people's time, we were talking about this before we started recording about trying to capture somebody's time to even read a book, right? Like, we love shiny things. That's why they have the sign spinners on the side of the street and all that kind of billboards.
Guy with
And so on
both-
YouTube, yeah, like all kinds of crazy stuff. So on YouTube, there are thumbnails, and the little thumbnail graphics have got to be so eye-catching and stopping to where you're like, all right. So I had to learn how to use Photoshop. Bro, that was another 2 days of misery where I was like beating my head into the wall and like watching every video and reading all this stuff. And yeah, it was a nightmare. And downloading video editing software, like learning how to do all this stuff, because the whole point is, like, I know that the better the quality I'm able to produce, the more likely that people are going to watch the video and they're going to recognize this new author. And that's what I want.
Are you happy with the traffic that it's brought you? Are you seeing changes? You got, what, 222 subscribers, and I know you're looking for more, but have you seen it grow quickly? What's your thought?
So it boomed like last week. Last weekend I put out a PBA or PSA, not a PBA. It's a peanut butter announcement.
Peanut butter and
peanut butter and no, I put out like a public service announcement. I just said, hey, I've got over 3,000 friends on Twitter. If a third of you would subscribe to the channel, I could maybe start making some money doing this, and it would make the product better.
Already a subscriber, so I had to let that one go.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll do that. You know what I mean?
There you go.
Yeah.
It's growing though, man. It's nice to see. Because I've been doing as much research as possible. Like, this has literally been like a mini business school for me, or marketing school, to where I'm having to figure out how, like, marketing nowadays is so different than it used to be. Like, you have to make people believe there's no product at all. There isn't a product. there is you and me having a conversation.
Yeah.
And you are buying one of us or both of us. Yep. You're buying the experience. You're not buying the product anymore. And coming to the right, yeah, the relationship.
Right, yeah, yeah.
It's been one of those like unlearning things too. It's not so much like, this is my product, this is my product, this is my product. It's like, how can I be of service to you? How can, let's have a conversation about what's important to you, kind of deal. But so the growth, and too, like with YouTube, there's a lot of viral videos out there that'll get like millions and millions of views. And I just don't produce content like that. That's not my purpose.
Yeah.
Right. So I know for me, it's all about the long play, slow and steady kind of tortoise
Okay.
approach.
So speaking of that, let's get into that. Let's get into your purpose, right? And I'm going to read something because it comes directly from you. It's from your website. It's kind of what I see as a bit of a calling card on your part. You describe your site as a place for creativity, hope, inspiration, and all around good times. And in our interviews, in your interviews, we see the good times. I mean, that's right there on the surface. But
Yeah.
we don't often get to hear about the creativity. Until today, we're hearing a bit about it. But I wanted to hear about your creativity and the things
Okay.
that you're doing that are creative, aside from your marketing skills and growing your website. Let's talk about your books. Let's talk about where it began for you. I mean, this is meant to serve a purpose. The Trent Foster and the Council of Ten story to start
Yeah.
with, if you want to begin. But tell me about your books. Tell me about your creativity.
Sure. If you don't mind, let me show you this real quick because this is so the creativity part. It was all right. Yeah. Let me go from here. We talked about my job too before I think we started recording, and the last job interview I went on was like the worst, most miserable thing. I left covered in blood and sweat and not even getting an interview.
I don't think you wanted that job.
I walked around Midtown Atlanta for an hour in August in like, full suit and all that kind of stuff. And I got home and I thought, Matt, you've done this your entire life. You've worked a job because of the money, because you think chasing the money is going to bring you happiness. When all along, all you were looking for is peace, contentment, pleasantness, happiness, joy, like inspiration, motivation, that kind of thing. Why don't you start doing those things? And so I sat down on my laptop and I started writing. I wrote a little um, fictionalized story about what happened that day, where there was like a big explosion and some guy coming out of retirement. But the whole thing was based off of because I think I was 4 months sober at that point, and I was trying to get back into work. But from that day, I decided I was gonna start doing the stuff that lit me up inside, that fulfilled me, and not things that just filled me, right? Like I can eat a bag of cookies and Oreos and be full, but I'm not fulfilled, right? Like it'll give me a moment of pleasure, like $100 or payday will give me some kind of pleasure, but is it fulfilling my life? So what I did was I have a mission statement, a vision statement, right? A vision statement for my life. And this was something very important for me to get clear about things with what I was important for my life. So my vision statement is this: to inspire and motivate others to be their best selves, to serve others with humility, to be better today than I was yesterday, to have courage to live a good life and become the man God created me to be. So that's like my why statement, right? My mission statement is this. This is how I go about doing that: open myself to all possibilities and be willing to accept the simple truth of life, becoming aware of my own shortcomings and having the discipline to do the simple tasks every day to become the best version of myself. So I know I'm very long-winded when
Nobody
but
would
it's,
accuse you of that. No.
no, yeah, right. I say all that to say I had to find a new way to live, and what I did was I started writing a story. So the story was I wanted to write inspirational stories, to inspire people, to motivate people, because in truth, I want to be inspired. I want to be motivated. So I want to be able to give that to other people. So I had this idea. I'm going to write a story about a guy who loses his legs, and that was the start of the story, and it turned into Dead Heart, an origin story, and it blossomed into a fantasy tale, a middle grade fantasy tale of the son of Sir Lancelot, who has his legs chopped off in battle and stabbed through the heart, and by a magical sword that turns him into an undead monster, undead zombie. And he has to go on a quest to prove his worth to his father, to the kingdom, and to himself by slaying a dragon. Right. Um, Now here's okay. I wrote this book in a month, and it was something so important to me. I had to get it out. I didn't know why, but I just like it was I had to get it out. and I didn't have anybody to do cover art. And talk about creativity, I was like, forget it. I'm just gonna do the cover art myself. And so you've seen the cover, but this is the original here.
Yep, that's the original.
This is the original. So that's Sir Lancelot and his or Sir Aegeon and his friend Margaret and the witch Gravely. Uh, but that story in Trent Foster as well ended up being like a fantasy version of what I was going through with my recovery. And I talk about this a lot too. Like that story, Dead Heart, was I had to die basically to the person that I was and find worth in the person that I am now.
Yeah.
And it's in writing's like that, you know.
So you say it's middle grade. I mean, that's a very heavy origin of that tale, and I get that that could be transferred to a younger crowd. I mean, are the kids going to run away screaming from this story? Are they going to enjoy the slaying aspect? Tell me how they're going to react when they see it.
Yeah, so no, yeah, it's not very graphic whatsoever. I mean, it talks about in the first chapter, Sir Aegeon was the youngest knight at age 12, and he's like his father, Sir Lancelot, had him jousting and sword playing with his stuffed bear, Mr. Fuzzers, and all this kind of stuff. And so it's and my kids are 9 and 6, and they've read it, or I've read it to them, and they enjoy it. There's no cussing or anything like that. And the slaying the dragon. There's some like crude humor, I suppose.
They love it, right?
They loved. They thought it was fantastic. Like there's the word "butt" in there a couple times, and they loved that. They thought that was fantastic. Yeah. But there's nothing too graphic, I would say. He does. I don't want to give too much away, but I've actually read the story online. He does eat a dragon's heart at the end. So.
Yeah. So you've read it online, meaning that this is something your viewers can tune into and sort of hear the story. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they can go on Uniweb Productions, and it's under the read aloud category. I've read the entire story. It's a novella, so it's 9 chapters.
Yeah.
I did
How many,
would you
say, how many words?
It's about 20,000.
Yeah, right. Good.
20,000 words. Yeah.
Proper middle grade novel. You're right in there.
Yeah. I didn't, that was the longest I'd ever written anything. Like I wrote a thesis in college about weightlifting and training athletes, and that was like, I don't know, 15 pages, and I was like, I'll never write something that long again.
It took you 1 month to write this story, to write this novella, right?
Yeah.
And then what happened? I mean, before you got to chasing people down in the street, because I know that's your next book, but I mean, take us through the putting it out there part.
Man, so I published it. I published Dead Heart, and it actually hit #1 in its category for a week on Amazon. It was the #1 best-selling in the short reads for teens and young adult, like teens and middle grade, which is pretty awesome. I was like, what the heck? So that was cool, but it was the same thing. Like at that time, I hadn't done any social media at all. I still wasn't on social media, but it was like that process. I was still writing every day, and I was looking for my next project, and I was like, I'm gonna write, episode 2 basically, or episode 1 for Dead Heart, because this is the origin story. And I started writing that, and I was taking writing classes online to try to help, with creativity and that kind of thing. And just because I'm not a professional writer, and I have a degree in exercise science and physical education, so writing was never my forte. But I didn't realize how much I loved it until I started doing it, and I started writing about what I loved. And so this idea came to me while I was taking that class online of a guy with superpowers that is found out by he's found out by a galactic force that wants to use his powers to their end, and he has to decide if he's going to fall down the trap that they're setting, and then it turned into Trent Foster and the Council of 10, which is, man, this was Trent Foster and the Council of 10. Let me tell you, this book right here, like, writing it made me cry. Like I cried a couple times during writing this book. It was and I never knew that was possible. I didn't think that like there was something I could write that would make me that like emotionally um, entangled, you know?
Right. Yeah. Hey Matt, let me ask you a technical question here. I'm losing Windows suddenly, and I don't see you or me. I don't want to interrupt your story because
No, that's cool.
it's interesting to me. I don't want to seem like I'm distracted, but I do want to make sure the video is running.
I
Um,
can see. Did it just die out?
yeah, I'm not sure. And then I get this option to start sharing. So I don't want to press it, and then suddenly we're live
Here's
without.
what you could do. Do you still have the stop recording available?
Even that seems to be gone. Let me see. Um, this is really weird. Close this, and then let me drive this. Oish. Yeah, my only two options here as buttons go are like start sharing and share screen, share application window. That's even worse. I'm going to escape out of that. That's even worse. Hey,
Here,
there we
do
go.
this.
All right, we're back. We're back. So,
Okay.
you said you're writing this story. It's very intense, right? You've gotten
Yeah.
inspiration from your creative writing online course, and you're making yourself cry. That's huge. That's a hugely inspiring thing for a writer to do. Um, Carry on, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was so Trent Foster is the story of a personal trainer who finds himself in a small town, um, and he's like this local hero where he's transformed all these people's lives. He's helped so many people become better versions of themselves, but he finds himself sick and just like doesn't like complete apathy towards life. Like everything he does is just there's no excitement left. There's he's finding it hard to get up and go do the things that he used to love. And like everyone thinks that him being a personal trainer and coaching people, that's like what he was supposed to do. And he's like, I just don't know anymore. And so this whole stuff happens, and the Council of 10 is basically a representation of the 10 dimensions that are proposed in superstring theory. So they are.
You'll have to tell me about superstring theory because
I don't know much about it, but I know. So there's
it's
10
like
different dimensions.
Parasol can, right? And it's fun colors and kids play with it. That's
That's
superstring.
yeah, that's silly string, but that's close. You're on to something. It's close. It's so the 10 dimensions in superstring theory are like you have your first three, which are uh, first dimension is like a point, second dimension is like a straight line, third dimension is where we are. Fourth dimension is time space. It's like the axis is right, like X, Y, Z, and a fourth dimension. So it goes all the way to 10, basically. That's as far as they can kind of fathom out. So I made the Council of 10 are the 10 physical natures of reality manifested in the universe, and they work with a group called the Sentinels, and the Sentinels are the galaxy's most superpowered beings, and they're all different species and different types and stuff, and so they're sent to collect Trent Foster. Trent is completely unaware of any power that's building inside of him. It turns out that power is trying to kill him, as well as, and there's a secret that they don't know about until very later on in the book, that the Council of 10 is trying to use Trent for a certain purpose. Um, but this book too was like, it was just, it's so crazy, right? So I started trying to write when I was talking about writing inspirational stories. I was like, my story has inspiration in it. I want to write my story from growing up where I did in a very poor family with 5 kids, dad leaving for, because he was an alcoholic and stuff like that, to where I am now, struggling my own battle through alcoholism and life in general and all that kind of stuff I've gone through, and being bullied really harshly as a child. And I tried to write like memoir style, and it kept coming out. It kept on wanting to come out as a fantasy or a fiction or sci-fi. And so I said, forget it. I'm just going to write something totally different. I'm going to write a sci-fi tale without me. And it's my story. It just like came out, and it's me. It's about like how I had to figure out that I had this. We all have this as human beings. And this is something I believe for everybody is we all have this unbelievable ability to do anything and everything uh, through. It's like an untapped resource, and I found this in writing. Like I'm literally rewriting the track of my life by writing this story, um, and realizing that my potential is unlimited. And we always say that the human beings are imperfect and will never be perfect, right? But I like to think that that imperfection means that I can continually improve. There's never anywhere I have to stop improving. So that basically means my potential is unlimited, right? So the story was like this existential realism of my whole life.
Very
I was
light
like,
tale about the super string theory, and yes, and its impact. It sounds like heavy reading. It sounds like really intense reading, um, and I mean, I'm sure that given your personality, and if you are the author here, that your personality comes through, and therefore that makes it vibrant and fun and energetic. Um, or am I wrong?
no, yeah, you're right. It is. It's not. So I'm not that smart. I don't believe I'm smart enough to write something too dense for people. That's for sure. There is a lot of my humor in here. Actually, it was criticized by onlinebookclub.org for being too cynical. That I was too cynical, but and it's weird, right? Because I don't think of myself necessarily as a cynical person. I'm very sarcastic.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I don't see cynicism out of you. I mean, the whole project is the opposite of cynicism. I mean, a guy who espouses hope is not a cynic. And now
yeah.
you're working on a sequel to the Council of Ten. Is that
No,
right?
I'm working on a sequel to Trent Foster and not Trent Foster to Dead Heart,
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm writing a third standalone
Okay.
novel
And that's
called
yeah. Go on.
it's called The Incredible Rhett Smiley. I'm 61,000 words into that.
Woo. The Incredible Red Smiley.
Yeah,
Sounds interesting.
it,
When are you
dude.
gonna? Should I even
This
ask?
one's this one's really cool. It's so much cooler than the other ones.
This sounds like something for Uniweb Productions, like just wow, you know.
I feel like writers will love this story. Um, it's about a writer
Yeah.
who's writing a story that he's been working on for 5 years, and he's afraid to publish it, and because he's afraid it's not perfect, and he finally publishes it, and I can't tell you what happens, but so this is the deal. This is why I wrote the story about Rhett Smiley, because I was terrified of success in my life, and I didn't know how I would handle any form of success. So I said, why don't I write a story about a guy who has success? And so Rhett Smiley is writing a book called Infinity's Mirror. And so it's really two books in one. So you see that you get to see the perspective of Rhett Smiley writing and going through life trying to publish his book. And then there's at the end of each chapter, there's like a 3-page chapter excerpt from Infinity's Mirror, and it talks about and it's all like it's the story of infinity. It's a totally fantastical tale with fairies and sprites and all kinds of different stuff. Another realm of existence.
All right. Yeah. Hey, call me a beta reader if you want. I'll take a look sometime and give you some thoughts if you're interested in that. That's
I am.
something
I
I'd like.
am.
Can we move along? And I wanted to ask, I'm more of a quick interview kind of guy, and
Sure.
I don't want to drag your time out too much. But I wanted to ask, and I've seen one thing that's been really fun for me, and in terms of having engaged with you in the past, has been the continued relationship, particularly through Twitter. And it seems like you've got a bit of a fan club and a following. People are really taking to your project, and they seem to keep that conversation going on Twitter. And do you want to comment on that, or I mean, is that something you envisioned happening? Is it entirely organic and welcome?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's neat because that was one of the things I wanted to shout about was like I truly believe everyone has this incredible best-selling story inside of them, and they just need a place to be able to tell it. And I say that because I think everyone's story can resonate with somebody else to inspire and motivate them to move along and feel so they don't feel alone in the world. And what's happened is the people I've interviewed with, they've started a group on Twitter, and it's just this continual thread of conversation between writers that are now connected, because writing can be such a lonely process if you let it, right? It's like we sit at our computers and write. Um, and I believe that a lot of writers are introverts by nature. We like to read and do solo projects. But connectivity, relationship is such a human need that I find what happened was completely, I had no clue it was going to happen, but I'm so happy it did.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big win. I think that's a major success. Do nothing else and you've had that, and that's really awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've run out of questions, but not curiosity necessarily. I think this conversation can go on, and I hope that it does. Maybe we'll reconnect another time and talk about
Sure.
what comes out next from you, or where your project leads. But it's an open invitation for me to carry on the conversation on another topic or theme that we choose.
Absolutely. Thanks. And same to you. And I know it's hard to like compress all the things that have gone on in a month into one conversation, right? Yeah. So I really appreciate you taking the time
Do you have
to
anything
talk.
else you hope to cover that we didn't get into, or is it?
I just rebranded my podcast. It's called First Draft. It's called Uniweb Productions presents First Draft with Matt Whiteside. So basically, First Draft it has all the content from the YouTube page, just in audible form, plus some additional content for people to listen to. So if anybody wants to check that out, that's great. I'd love that.
I think my next Matt Whiteside thing I'm going to check out, I want to see or hear the story. I want to hear you reading Dead Heart. That to me is intriguing.
I do all the voices. I make
Be like bedtime. My voice. We'll tuck in and listen to that. That could be fun.
You should. The witch. I do the witch's voices. The witch's voice and the frog's voice are the best. They're so funny.
Yeah, we'll check it out. That sounds great.
Please do.
Good. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, Ben.
The audio here for just a second, and I don't know. I'm not going to invite people to tune in next time because I have no idea when I'll do this again. But this has been for me.
So if you just